Why, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is O.G.Starwars, your Legends girl, and I am bringing back my Convo with, and again, now he's making his second appearance in my Convo with, and this is Kamran. So hello, Kamran. How are you doing?
It's great to see you, Laura. I'm always honored to be on your channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I look a bit orange today. I don't know. It's my cat knocked down my curtain, and yeah, it was a fun time this morning. So yeah, so
it's a good color from what it would the chakra perspective, right? I'm a second chakra sort of guy, so that's my chakra.
Yeah, so I'm rooting down. So red is the root chakra. So I'm rooting down, getting centered. And you probably know a lot about that. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about as well is culture and chakras and, all the similarities with the spirituality within the world and stuff. But I also wanted to talk about Star Wars as well. So,
and we can connect those because, I have a lot of things to say about how the Jedi and the Sith relate to mysticism because Lucas studied all of that.
Exactly. And that's why I love Star Wars, if you haven't got that already. So I'm going to see who's in chat here. So we have Zachariot, howdy O.G.Starwars, and Kamran Pasha. Let's see here. And Christopher, hello, Alora. Did I spell your name right? And yes, he did. It's Aloha with an R before the H. That's how I say that.
What does Alora mean?
I have no idea. It was just something that...
Is it in the native tradition or is it another origin?
It's just how when I was named, my parents decided to spell it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no like specific origins. It's just a different spelling of it.
But the name doesn't have a meaning that you know of.
No.
Okay.
I researched it and everything. People have asked me, "Well, are you Hawaiian?" Because how it looks and how it's spelled. And I'm like, no. Yeah, so it's very, very different. And there's no origins or no meaning behind it. So,
well, I have studied Huna, which is the Hawaiian mystical tradition. I've studied it in Hawaii, and our teachers, they were telling us that there are actually very ancient spiritual connections between the Hawaiian people and the American Native Americans. And, they believe, even though we don't have a historical record of it, they believe that there was contact thousands of years ago between the Hawaiian Islands and the mainland. And
we're all interconnected.
Yeah, the spiritual transmission. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at the world, I mean, if you look at the world as a spider web, and if you went, and you might know this, but there's many electrical points throughout the world that are like plexus, are magnitudes, are
like ley line points where they connect. Yeah.
Yes, and so so that's how we're all connected somehow. And if you look at where these pyramids are, like in Mexico and Egypt and stuff, those are some of the focal points as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, let's see who else we have here. So we have Neon Valentine or Neo. I'm renaming you. Sorry. Those are some of the focal points as well.
Absolutely.
And then let me blast this in the comic shop. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. You're going to get more than just Star Wars for your comic shop. So hopefully everybody knows what we're talking about. But if we're talking about people coming in and out and kind of being nerdy and geeky, they probably do. All right. Let's see here. Who else do we have in the chat that's joining us? We do have Stieg Kenobi, my co-pilot for Coffee Chat. And cheers to you, darling. I hope you're doing well. And then Orange Hat Reviews. I'm here. Hey, to both OG and Kamran Pasha. Good to see you.
And she's very orange today in honor of you.
Yes. Stupid lighting.
I like I said, I'm a second chakra guy. Orange is my color. Actually, red's my color. I can add orange into.
Oh, well, that's creativity. So that's creativity, both, physically and spiritually and mentally. So it's very awesome. And I could see that. And I think a lot of us who are in the arts really hone in on that part of us right there.
The red gives me the Sith-like rage to survive Hollywood. We can get into that.
I see red.
Very useful energy.
And then AG Journeyman, thank you for coming in. And Keck44, how are you doing? And let's see here, the Gordon Godbrother channel. I don't think I've seen you in my chat before. So thank you for coming in. I'm sorry if I haven't noticed you before. If you have been in, I apologize. Jedi Padawan Trailer, hello OG and Mr. Pasha. And let's see here. And of course, to everybody. And I love the greeting. Like, do women in your culture have a different saying or way of saying hello or greeting, or is it all the same?
It's a standardized thing. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, and so
yeah.
that's standard. I mean, I think some cultures, like the Persian Muslim cultures, have very specific Persian phrases, and Pakistanis adopt some of them or whatever. But that's a general universal phrase.
Oh, okay. Because with mine, like when we say hello, men, and I'll use this, and you probably hear it through Hollywood and just stereotypical name. Men say how, so you've heard that how, but women we say hey. So it's different, and we do have feminine and masculine language, but with some of the words and how we talk, not as apparent as the Spanish or other like French or whatever, not as apparent as those or Italian, but we do have a feminine side of the language.
Well, wait till the woke people get to that. When they figure out the native languages are masculine and feminine, they ain't gonna like that.
Oh God, yes. And I was thinking about that too recently. It's like, with our cultures, with this like this feminist movement here of like equality, they're forgetting that even with native culture that is rooted here in the United States, that we do have matriarchy and patriarchy. We do have women roles versus men, and it was functional for the existence of our tribes and our,
it's about balance. And we're going to talk about that because the force is about that, and force is based on Taoism and other traditions, which talk a lot about the yin and the yang and all of that. And it's about balance. We use the term equality to take away balance.
Yeah.
And so that's a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, when there's equality, there's really no more equality, really. So let's see here. John Jenkins, hello, how are you doing? And Club Star Wars, hey, how are you doing? And let's see here. I think people are just popping in and everything. Let's see here. Alex Krogan, hi, how are you doing?
You already got like almost 30 people. That's pretty good. That's a nice way to start.
Yeah, the channel's steadily growing. It's more or less based on George Lucas' era of Star Wars, but I do like to add in little fun things like this combo with, and I meant to keep it going, but it just didn't happen because I was in school. But I want to be able to bring in people and interview them and stuff as well, whether in the community or in the broader range of Star Wars community. So,
well, everything happens at the right time. I'm just happy to be back on at this moment. So.
Thank you so much. Yes, and you are so correct on that one. Let's see here. And then we have Geek Tropology. Hello, how are you doing? And then, oh, wow. And then we have Rangi. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Awesome. And he's coming from your Twitter account. So thank you so much for coming and jumping onto my channel just to listen. So I know everybody is here and very curious about the state of Star Wars. And I know that, you working in Hollywood and stuff, you do have some somewhat, or I would say not somewhat, but some insider information.
Yeah, I have connections to people who are very deep into it. I don't claim to be deep into, I wish I was deep into Lucasfilm, but I have good friends who have those connections, and so I get the information.
Yeah, and me, I take everything with a grain of salt, and I try not to do too much or say too much about it until there is official information about it, just for integrity for my channel. And I'm not saying that people who do report on rumors or all of this are like insider information without it being publicly made announced. Are not don't have any integrity. I just feel that I would rather wait and watch and see. That's me. But
well, I mean, I have things to share that I've heard, and no one, including myself, has to accept them because I've heard them from other people rather than I had that conversation with this person who's doing it, right? So everything is telephone.
Yeah, exactly. And so we could talk and we could talk about these rumors and stuff, and that's great. It creates conversations. I just tell people, don't give your hopes up until it's officially announced. So come into it with your eyes wide open, and don't set up these expectations based upon it. Be open to what can be or what will be, and that's how I see that. And so we're dealing with the Mandalorian, and I've heard that there's a split in within the factions of Lucasfilm when it comes to Favreau and Filoni. You may have heard I don't care for Filoni because even when he worked for George Lucas, there was some stuff that was done, and he has said to as well, that makes me question him.
Sure.
But
he tried to do his own lore, away from what George had set up, and
Yeah, exactly. So I don't get the pedestal part of him. People put him on. He does make some good stuff because there's some episodes in the Clone Wars I did enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I give credit where credit's due. So I'm not saying this guy is total crap, you know. So, you know, with that, what have you heard with that, you know, with that so-called split within the faction of Kennedy versus Favreau? So.
Well, I have actually heard something very specific just a few days ago about Filoni. But before I get into it, I actually met Dave Filoni once because I interviewed to be the head writer of Clone Wars when they were first the concept, right? And and so and you know, and I was like, oh my, because when my agents told me I was up for this, I was like, so. I get to work with George Lucas in the ranch, and like, yeah, the whoever's chosen is going to put together a writing team and is going to work with Filoni and Lucas and create Clone Wars. I was like, well, put me up for that, and I got all the way through the process till I actually sat down with Filoni himself, and that was the last step of the process. And you know, ultimately, I didn't get it, so he gave it to somebody else. But I came very close. Ended up working on Tron Uprising as the head writer shortly thereafter. So ended up doing something very interesting otherwise. But you know, for me, that was a life dream to be in a room with George Lucas, and I came that close, right? But so be it.
Yeah.
You know, Filoni chose who he chose, and God bless him. And I think they made a good show for the most part. You know, it's actually interesting because I heard later that I was pretty high up on it until I started going deep into the mysticism. Like in the interview, I started getting overexcited and talking about George's knowledge of Taoism and Sufism and mystical traditions and the different elements of the dark and the light balance in Taoism, right? The yin and the yang. And I even in the interview, I sensed like something changed. Like it went from being very friendly to a little bit like, okay, this is going over my head. And I think at that point, Dave sort of tuned out, right? It wasn't what he envisioned for, or that wasn't the elements that he was interested in. And afterwards, I heard from somebody who worked on the show is like, yeah, you came pretty close, but I think you went over the edge with that. You know, he just wasn't interested in that kind of philosophy, and you lost it. I said, okay, well, I'm interested in that philosophy, and I think who George is. So.
Yeah, and that's funny because, you know, like you said, oh, well, he's his apprentice, so he understands everything what George did. So you came in with the same philosophy as George, and it intimidated him. He didn't want anybody out. This is how I see it. That he probably didn't want you to outshine him with what you know, with the direction where George went.
The person who said that to me, again, I didn't have Mr. Filoni say that to me. I didn't give you the job because you did. But the person who said that to me was of the opinion that is what happened. You know, and that happens a lot because in Hollywood, people don't like to be outshined. And especially if you are very close to someone like George Lucas and being seen by the outside world as the right hand, the last thing you want is some other dude to come in and potentially be the right hand. It's literally like it's the Sith, you know, it's the master and the apprentice. The master is always aware the apprentice is trying to take the job, right?
Right. And so, yes, he's like, no, I will slay you at this interview. You're gone.
But you know, both my good and my bad is that I'm a very straightforward guy, and I don't think in these terms. And so I just shared my passion and enthusiasm, and I thought my sharing my knowledge of the mysticism would bring me closer to it. Instead, apparently it pushed me away from it. But so be it. You know, and you know, it is what it is. But I met Mr. Filoni at that time, and there's no ill will there. He made a good show. And then the recent thing that I just heard, is, I have a friend of mine who's a very successful screenwriter, much more famous than me. I won't name who this person is, but this person is very deeply embedded into the Star Wars world, knows all these people very closely, and I'm getting the impression that he's actually sometimes used by them to seed information out. Right? You know, he actually, you know, I read, and I think you know about this. I read the script for Colin Trevorrow's, you know, unfilmed version of Episode 9, Duel of the Fates, and this friend of mine actually gave me the script. And I eventually began to realize, I think maybe they want people to know that the script exists. And I soon discovered other people were getting the script. I thought I'd given it exclusively and I didn't put it out there, right? And then I discovered it was already out there. So I was like, okay, this is being seeded. So suddenly I got an email from my friend a few days ago saying that, just to let you know, Filoni has a plan to erase the sequel trilogy. He has an actual plan, and he is seeding it in The Mandalorian step by step. He's doing it very carefully because he's aware of the politics of the environment. But he has a plan, and The Mandalorian is seeding step by step a plan so that eventually, when it is politically safe to do so, the sequel trilogy will be erased. But it's in process right now. The shows, even though people are saying, well, look, The Mandalorian is already setting up the First Order and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's not going to go the way you think. And it's going to be an alternative timeline.
That's the thing though too, is because we know there's a story group, and we know that, you know, as long as the president's still in, and as long as that story group is still intact and stuff, you know, there's not much anybody can do to really get rid of the sequel trilogy and right now, and you know there has to be a lot of changes and stuff. So I'm very curious about, you know, this rumor or this plan or whatever you want to call it, how it's going to play out, if it's even going to play out, if they're going to allow that, because you know we know Kennedy is the executive producer and stuff, and we all are talking about her level of involvement, whether she just comes in and helps record. Like I watched the Galaxy behind the scenes, which was kind of weird because like season 2, a lot of them were talking, oh, we're just making it how we seen it and how we played it when we were kids. And so basically we're making it our own way instead of going and sticking with the lore. And so that kind of concerns me as someone who's been in Star Wars for basically the continuity and the lore and the mysticism and, you know, the hero's journey and all of that in that. So that kind of, you know, puts, you know.
Well, but the good thing, Laura, is there's a balance. I do think Mr. Filoni has ambitions to put his imprint on Star Wars. He's already done so, right? I don't think Jon Favreau has those ambitions. I think Jon Favreau is us. He's the kid from the 70s who grew up playing with the toys and wants to play out the stories he told himself in the 70s with the AT-AT thing and all that stuff. And so and he is more powerful in many ways, right? You know, he is the power figure right now in Star Wars. And he is coming, from what I've been told, from the perspective of he's just a fan who loves this stuff. He wants to keep it close to George Lucas. I don't think his ambition is this becomes Jon Favreau's Star Wars, right? Maybe Mr. Filoni's ambition that this becomes Mr. Filoni's Star Wars. I don't think that's Favreau's, and he is the final say right now.
Yeah, and so that's still alarming to me, but we'll go with that here in a few minutes. So Abu Nas, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. I got front row seat to watch 2 of the best that's on YouTube now. Kick back and enjoy the show. Doing light prep for Dark Council, so break it down, but don't have your YouTube or Disney come after you. Well, I have had my stuff taken down from Disney before, so yes.
No, well, I just want to say salam to my beloved brother Abu Nas, you know, and also I'm going to tease him because I've never been on the Dark Council. Lots of white people have been on the Dark Council, and this brown people have been on the Dark Council. I'm going to keep teasing you until I get on the damn Dark Council, and maybe that's going to be never, and that's okay.
Well, I guess you could say red skin or red person or whatever's been on Dark Council.
Did you get on the Dark Council? Whatever.
Yeah. So you know what, Abu, you know, get with it. Get this guy on.
Sometimes things are just not meant to be, but it's okay. But I will remain a fan of the Dark Council and Abu Nas's rap in particular, which is getting more and more risque, which I'm enjoying.
Yeah, exactly. So back to that with the Mandalorian and the division or what have you. You know, like I said, I take a lot of things with a grain of salt, and I'm just going to kick back and observe. My heart does stay with George Lucas' era of Star Wars, but my channel also is about compare and contrast between the 2 lores. And so keeping, you know, my eye on what's being developed in the current lore with the current owners, you know, to compare and contrast like I did with Luke. I did a Luke video from the Mandalorian Luke versus the original EU Luke. And
it was important that you did that because, you know, one of the things that you're doing, Laura, that's so important right now is that you're reminding everyone that there is a wonderful and, in my opinion, better version of Star Wars that has already existed for decades. And it's rich, and you can spend years reading it and studying it and exploring it. And yes, you have this nice fan fiction version that Disney is creating. Some of it's getting better now. But there's beautiful stuff. And you're constantly reminding people that you don't have to settle for less. You have this wonderful thing.
Exactly. And it was a very interesting video. And of course, I got some thumb downs about it. I knew that people were going to get mad. And it's not to make people feel bad for liking the Luke scene. And that's not my thing. I did like it, but then I also was heartbroken because, you know, if they decide to keep the course correction with linking all of the trilogies together with the Mandalorian, then that leads to the Luke Skywalker that was created in the sequel trilogy. And so that's where my heart breaks, because if that's the fact, then we're going to get this magnificent Luke that we, you know, read about, knew about in the EU after Return of the Jedi, going ahead, and then finally they're going to have to like share his fall and why and all this and stuff, and why he wasn't as powerful.
Laura. No, John Favreau and Dave Filoni don't have any passion for that storyline. That storyline was imposed on them and upon all of us. And it is, as you said earlier, it is because the current president is Miss Kennedy, and this story group, I don't know what they do except create problems with the fans, but they're there. As long as these characters are there, they can't publicly say it. But their goal is, even if it's 10 years, they're going to erase this from history. And they're just going to give us more and more Luke, and maybe Leia and Han will show up. They'll give more and more of us so that eventually we will forget this ending that they don't ever want to get to.
And my thing too is with this is like, okay, so they're fixing Luke, and I'll say that, like I said, I'll take everything with a grain of salt. They want to fix Luke, and but the thing is that they're gonna have to go in and fix Leia and Han, Chewie as well, because if you know the lore, and I was gonna ask you too, and I'll get back to this in a few minutes about what your favorite EU character and all this is and stuff, but Chewie, with the Wookiee culture, they create a life debt. And then even if the person they create a life debt passes away, then they stick with that family. So he should have went by Leia's side in the SP. Because that's what that honor system is.
Yeah, they don't know it. But the people who wrote this don't know any of the lore. I do believe J.J. Abrams is a fan. I don't know that he knows the lore that well. I think he knows the lore a little bit better than the others too. And he tried to fix some of it in his episode 9, right? He knew some of it, like light speed ramming doesn't work. He knew that, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they don't know any of these, Wookiee thing, and they don't know they whatever.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like the information is there. The source material is there. Well,
Captain Kennedy doesn't believe it's there, but it is there. There are no books. There's 80 books.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I just wanted to chat a little bit about that because, again, what's, being said behind the scenes and being leaked out and all that, does give people hope and stuff. But and I think maybe I'm not trying to be pessimistic about things. It's like, okay, I will take it with a grain of salt and I'll watch things develop, and I won't give up my hopes with that. And I will still continue with the George Lucas era of Star Wars. Sure. And I'm not trying to burst anybody's bubbles. I'm just trying to be more real about that, saying, keep your eyes wide open and watch and observe.
And there's a political process. There is a political process. So we don't know how it's going to play out. I personally believe ultimately sort of the anti-Lucas faction will die out because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable from an economic point of view. I think Disney has figured that out. And I really do believe the two whammies that were essentially the rope-a-dope knockout moments were the incredible success of the Mandalorian version of Luke, right? And followed by Mr. Hidalgo's foolishness in how he interacted with the fans. I think those two together were knockout pieces for that faction. I think they were just taken down. I don't know that they have any power left.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, time will tell and stuff, and we'll see. There needs to be course correction within the company with how they treat fans, and it's obviously that with the allowing the disconnect between fans and the creators and what have you, they have lost money.
Oh yeah, they know. The accountants have looked at it. The accountants have, from what I've been told, the accountants have all had those meetings and said, "Look, the merchandising isn't working. Because they all had projections when they bought this franchise, and they know where the projection was supposed to be, and they know where it came in at. And even if they're not saying it publicly, they know it better than we do how bad that differential is." Yeah.
Exactly. And so again, like I said, I'm curious all about that. And so when you started seeing all this go down with this Disney associates, like even J.J. Abrams had said something, that was negative towards the fan, not as extreme as Pablo and RJ, or Ryan Johnson's, and then and even Chuck Wendig, but what was your thoughts when you heard and you seen all that go down?
Well, is your question about my thoughts on J.J. Abrams? I'm sure.
Just everything in general, like with seeing all of them at one time or point, sure, berate or tear down the fans for their, their disdain or their critique on the sequel trilogy and other Star Wars material.
Yeah, I mean, the people we know that are the most guilty really do believe the things that they're saying, right? I mean, like Mr. Johnson, Mr. Hidalgo, Ms. Kennedy hasn't said these things, or she said other things, like, there's no source material that are reflective of her worldview about this, right? So I do believe J.J. Abrams is politically savvy. That's why he's very successful. And when he was doing these things, he knew that he had to at least seem like he's going along with the current people in power, because at the time, we, the fandom menace, and the people that were unhappy, seemed like the crazy minority, right? And so it wasn't politically safe to embrace us. Right. I think it's very clear after the third movie came out, when J.J. Abrams said, it's perfect. If people hate this trilogy, they're right. And the people who love it are right, too. That's added on. Right.
Yeah.
That was his message. And I actually do believe J.J. believes that. I really do believe J.J. is a fan of Star Wars. I think he likes Star Wars more than he likes Star Trek. Right. And I think he was really shocked at what happened and in The Last Jedi. And I'm sure that, I don't know this for a fact, but I am sure there was a lot of anger behind the scenes, that what he had set up was intentionally derailed so that nothing could be fixed. And then he's asked to fix it so that, as Abu Nas, our friend, has said, the moment he did his one interview run right after the movie and he vanished. You don't hear nothing about J.J. Abrams anymore, right? You hear more about Rian Johnson. You don't hear anything about J.J. Abrams. He's vanished. He's like, all right, fine. Yeah, I fixed it as best I could. Here's some Scotch tape. I'm out of here. See you later.
Yeah, I'm going back to my business and
I'm going
my own business kind of deal.
This is ruined. And then he left it to Jon Favreau to fix it. There is a question here that I want to address, Mr. Frank Hernandez. Right? If you want to read that, it's a super chat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a super chat right here, and I was just waiting for you to finish. So I believe this is Filipino currency at 125. Hi, OG and Cameron. I was wondering with your connections, Cameron, have you heard if Pablo is going to be fired or moved to printer work duty? Hashtag Luke is back.
Well, I'd heard months ago that he was already in what you would call printer work duty, that essentially, months ago, Pablo Hidalgo, maybe even over a year ago, had been basically collect a paycheck and don't come into the office kind of thing, right? And so, and in some ways, I think Ms. Kennedy is in that position as well, right? Now none of us are working in offices, but just collect a paycheck and don't get involved in this. And personally, I believe, and this is not intel from anyone, this is my personal perceptions, because I'd heard for a long time that Mr. Hidalgo had been pushed out and was still formally there and was essentially twiddling his thumbs and talking to the story group and giving ideas that nobody was paying attention to, right? But collecting his paycheck and still having his title. That he, I'm sure, has zero involvement whatsoever in the Mandalorian, and that when the Luke came out and the incredible, passionate, global reaction happened to just seeing this 5-7 minutes of Luke coming back with a lightsaber and being a kick-ass Jedi, that his anger boiled over. His anger being, shut out of this, because I'm sure he thinks of himself as a Star Wars fan, right? Maybe he was once, but
he was.
But he bought into this. He bought into this nonsense and he invested his ego and his self-respect into this nonsense. And so when the nonsense of the sequel trilogy is set aside, he's on this island watching everyone enjoying himself. That's what I think created his even if it was a hidden outburst. He's a fool to think it's not going to be broadcast out there, right? And and so, but that lack of wisdom, two things. One told me that he was overwhelmed with anger at being left out of this, and so he couldn't participate in the celebration. So all he could do was take out somebody else's enjoyment of it. One. And number two is he said it because, he's like, what are you going to do to me? I'm already nothing. What are you going to do to me? You're going to fire me? I was like, well, they might, Pablo. You're getting too far. And so I think that's still possible. I actually think it's a real possibility.
That's what you call doubling down right there.
Right. It's like, what are you going to do to me? You already cut me out. You're making me, you're not paying attention to me, sending me a paycheck, and I can't even do nothing. Go ahead, fire me. Well, I don't know, man. You might get your wish. I think it's a realistic possibility that he went too far. You know why I believe that? Is because when Variety, the trades, published an article about this, the trades are something. The trades are not news articles. The trades are propaganda outlets of the studios, right? Yeah. They serve power agendas. They are spokespeople for the studio system. That's what the trades are, right? And so suddenly when you see an article come out like that, that ain't happening without, at the very least, Iger and Chapek knowing about it and quite possibly being behind it, right? So at the very least, Iger and Chapek picked up the trades and said, what the hell is this, right? Who is this guy? They probably don't even know who this guy is, right? Who is this guy? And he's doing this thing, and we're making money now? He's messing with our money train? At the very least, the people at the top have heard about this now and have heard about him, right? He's not some random nobody stormtrooper anymore. right? He's now the Emperor now knows who he is, and that's a problem, right? And it's even worse if the Emperor said, I need to get rid of this guy, so you put this article out, which is also a possibility. I just don't think he's going to survive much longer once the trades have put him out there like that. That's that's Order 66 right there.
There you go. I love your analogies with all this, and Pablo, the one thing that I really enjoyed that he did for Disney, not Disney, for Star Wars, is before the buyout, is he made the reader's companion, and it puts all the novels and the young reader novels in chronological order.
And did he do a good job? You felt he did a good job with that?
He did a great job, and he even put in, there's some things that he could have done better, of course. There's some things that he might have left out, but he even put in like George's involvement with some novels and stuff like that. So it kind of breaks people the thoughts that George didn't get involved, George didn't care about the EU, all of that. So that's one thing I could say, because like I said, I give credit where credit's due. I don't care for the man, but that's one thing I could say that he did really good.
Well, he was a respected figure until he put all of his eggs in this nonsense basket, right? But but again, he went with, like everybody else in Hollywood, doesn't look ahead. I immediately knew when I saw the Force Awakens, I was like, well, this wasn't new. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I hope to see what they do with it. And then when I saw The Last Jedi, I'm like, all right, they are on the wrong track. And I was very vocal from the beginning, even though I'm in the industry, that this is a disaster, right? Whereas everyone else is just like, well, Rian Johnson is the toast of town, and he was the toast of town for several years. They defended him because he was the chosen one. The system chooses people and says, you're the chosen one, and we will defend you from all attacks, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna be on the island where everyone is safe. It's like, man, that island's gonna sink. I know.
It's like King of the Mountain, they're all pushing each other off right now, just for the sake of being the top Star Wars creator, and it's ridiculous.
Part of the problem is, and this is just, I'm sure it's true in every industry, I can only speak to my industry, which is the film industry. The problem is the vast majority of people in the industry, I mean, they're not brilliant people. I mean, there are artistic, creative people. A lot of decision makers are just, they're just living in the moment. They're enjoying the fame of the day. And they can't see, like, the way I often describe it is, think of Hollywood as a rider sitting on a horse backwards. Like, the horse is moving this way, but the rider is backwards and it's just seeing what passed by and saying, oh, I want to go there. I want to go there, but it's already gone. It has no idea what's coming. So everyone's backwards and Force Awakens was great. And Luke wasn't in it. So let's keep going down that direction, right? And so, you're not seeing where this is going. Where it's going, people are now waiting to see what happens with Luke in a good way, right? So you're not seeing where it's going. And everyone's on the horse sitting backwards. And those that are on the horse sitting forwards are usually weirdos who are on the fringe of the industry until their moment comes. Exactly. Kind of like me.
I would be like one of the token people that they would want in, but I don't meet the proper feminist.
No. You would be the biggest threat of all, because I'm also a token. I'm a brown Muslim guy, right? The moment that I'm not on board with the woke nonsense, then it's a real problem. It's more of a problem than the white male that they hate.
Yes, exactly. So we have this from Terminus. Cameron, in Mando, there is a ship that jumps to hyperspace in the planet's atmosphere, and the original Lucas lore dictates the ships cannot hyperspace within a planet gravity. Yes, and that's the thing, is that one of my fellow friend YouTubers did question that, and even Filoni did that in the Clone Wars one time. And so, like, people who really, really are into the lore notice these things. There are rules that were set and made for, for the, how it goes to story group. You create the world building, you create the rules so that it makes sense to us. And so we have that believability that, this is what's going on in the world, and, everything, is coherent and everything. So that's one thing, is that, the rules were established that they cannot hyperspace within gravity wells. That's including atmospheres or any, like, moons or, like, interdictors. If someone pulls them out of the hyperspace lane with interdictors, it's because they create a gravity well. It pulls them out. Right. And so, there's
violated that with Force Awakens. I mean, that's one of the moments I don't think I'm a casual fan, but I'm not as in-depth knowledge of the lore as you are, Laura. And I was watching The Force Awakens. I was like, when he penetrated the shield into the atmosphere, I said, it can't do that. It can't do that. That's against. I knew that's against the rules. Right?
It was established in the OT with A New Hope. Han himself even says we can't, jump, or we would basically kill ourselves. We had to wait till we get out, basically.
Exactly. I mean, the idea of hyperspace of light speed is essentially you're going into another dimension, but the
Mm-hmm.
dimension is still connected to ours. That's how you can go in and out. And the connecting point is gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So large gravity wells, a sun, a planet, a black hole will pull you back into this 3D reality and will tear you apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
why you have to have these hyperspace lanes that people have figured out go around the gravity wells. They've mapped them, right?
yeah. And then with hyperspace too, and this was kind of messed up too within the new lore, is that there are set hyperspace lanes. And so like when we had the blockade in the Phantom Menace, they blockade that hyperspace, that lane that went to the planet. That's why you couldn't see them jump anywhere around the planet and stuff. And now that's taken, yeah, so now that's being taken out of context as well. And so there's like
happened to Endor, Return of the Jedi. They had to jump in far from the moon of Endor, right? And then come in. And you actually see that great scene of, you see as they're jumping in, they're really far away, and then you see Endor slowly getting bigger and bigger on the screen, right?
Exactly. And so we're the thing is like, okay, so we really wanted Luke back in his correct form, how George Lucas intended him to be. Yeah. And that's a great start. But then now people, and I'm not saying everybody's saying this, or it's like the verbiage of everybody who like the Luke Skywalker scene, but I'm seeing like, oh, Star Wars is saved, or blah, 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 because of Luke. And I'm like, well, we're forgetting the mythos. We're forgetting
the mythos has been shred since Disney got involved, right? So yeah, I mean, so now we're basically it's Humpty Dumpty time, right? We're doing our best to put it back together again, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a painted Humpty Dumpty, and we're all excited because we saw it completely shattered.
Yeah, and when you have that foundation of the mythos that's created Star Wars still, array and in pieces, the characters still can't exist well in that. There has to be a lot of mending in that. There has to be a lot of put back together with the lore for it to be believable. And so I'm curious to see where they're going to go with that.
I mean, what I believe is going to be step by step, little by little, the lore errors will become less and less. That's their goal. I do think Favreau understands the lore. I really do think he understands it. Right? And so I did not watch The Mandalorian until I heard about Luke's return. Right. I've not given Disney Star Wars $1 until that. For the last since The Last Jedi, I didn't go see Solo. I have not bought any of their material. But I said, if they ever try to fix Luke and get back into the right track, I will be open to it. And so now I subscribed, and I'm enjoying it. Is it? I'm already I'm most of the way through season 1.
Okay.
It's not, it's not. I just finished the gunslinger episode where he meets the bounty hunter on Tatooine, right? And I like that episode a lot. And Filoni did that episode, but it's not perfect, but it is clearly, when we've just had a broken egg, it is clearly something better than that, and it's getting closer and closer to fixing things, right? Hopefully within 2 or 3 more seasons, you won't notice these glaring continuity errors or whatever, just because Favreau's trying to smooth them out.
Yeah, and now see, they're only doing a few or a couple of series and stuff, and then we have other people coming in, and so this is like where we get with the Rogue Squadron, which is going to be after the sequel trilogy, which is kind of weird, because didn't they defeat them? Aren't they supposed to be okay now?
Well, I mean, but even and I think even we know from the EU lore, there was a long process to bring the Empire down to 25% of its territory by the time Thrawn showed up, right? So that took years. And so inevitably, in the real circumstance of the fall of the Empire, that's just the fall of one dude. You've got all these, Moffs and everybody else running around. And that's established in the lore in episode 4, where the Senate is dissolved and all the governors have direct control over their territory. Right? So those guys ain't going nowhere. You got to fight. You took down the Emperor. Now you got to fight every one of those guys, right? So that's a story you can tell.
Yeah, and the thing is too is, okay, so I'll compare and contrast. So in that timeline, we do have this was after the Vong War, and so we seen a different faction of enemies that came in within the original lore. And then so once the sequel trilogy happened, it was shortly after the Vong War in the timeline. And then after that, we have like the peace treaties with the Empire, and then we had the nephew Jason Solo fall to the dark side. And then once they cleaned that up, then they reconstructed the Galactic Alliance to and they put in new leaders like Dala and Jagged Fell and stuff like that. And what was funny is that they didn't realize that
is it talking about Admiral Dala, the hot redhead chick? She comes back. I read the book. Well, I thought she went to the black hole. So she comes back. I haven't gotten that far. I hope it's hot. I want to see more of her. Why'd you go to the black hole?
Yeah. So by the time we get to Legacy era of Star Wars, after the Vong War and all that, and the Darkness trilogy and stuff, she and we get into Fate of the Jedi, she is returned, and it was Luke that recommended her because of her knowledge in in the government and stuff like that. And there's many debates on like why did he do that? Yeah.
That's what happens historically. I mean, look, in the Islamic tradition, the victory of Islam when the Prophet took over Mecca after 20 years of them trying to defeat him, everyone assumed he was just going to execute all of his enemies. Instead, he just pardoned everybody, and they all became leaders of the government. And shortly thereafter, all of his adversaries were like the kings.
This is not Luke's case, because after his recommendation of her bringing her in as one of the chief of states, I guess you could say, she then found a reason and got him to go into exile.
Okay.
And for not reacting or seeing his nephew Jason Solo fall.
All right. Well, that's at least an intelligent version of how one goes into exile, right? Okay.
Yes, not for just like, oh, my nephew is going to murder someone, I must kill him kind of deal.
I mean, that's an actual failure. Your nephew has essentially resurrected the Sith, right? Or a new version of it, right? And so you didn't do it, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was very interesting. So, you have a lot of catching up to do in the EU within the
and I was really excited because I felt sad when Admiral Dala went into the black hole. I was like, man, this hot chick, I want to see this hot chick. I like redheads. This hot redhead. It was to kicking everyone's ass. It was the most interesting character to me since Thrawn. I was like, where the hell is she's gone?
And she sides with Boba Fett for a little bit too. So.
All right, so I got a lot more to get into. How many novels are there now in the EU? 80 or so? How many?
How many what?
How many novels are in the EU before they all shut it down?
I think there's like over 180, 200, and that was just like the regular adult novels. And then you have the readers, the young readers and all that. I have like a huge collection down on my site here, including with the young readers and stuff. And they've been pretty well done in a very well coherent manner. Yeah, they had to do some small retcons because of like the Clone Wars and stuff like that. But they are really well done. They worked well together on creating such a believable universe and history. And so I know you talked about Natassi Dala. So who is your favorite EU character, maybe besides her, that you've read?
Well, I mean, I would think that the character when I read the original Thrawn novels, I was like Mara Jade. I was absolutely obsessed with her, right? And then I had no idea how we were going to develop it into this long journey with her, right? And her marriage and all that. But so I do hope and I do believe that eventually Favreau is going to bring her in because she's a fan favorite, right? Just like Thrawn's a fan favorite, right? I mean, she was in many ways more of a fan favorite than Thrawn because Thrawn died pretty early on in this EU, right? Where she went on to have all these adventures, and I think people were heartbroken that she wasn't in the sequel trilogy. And so I think the smart business move, and Favreau's a very smart business person, is to bring her back, and I'm hoping that I think he seeded everything. I mean, the fact that he brought Ahsoka in, the fact that he brought that Mandalorian chick from the Clone Wars in, and so he's giving the fans what they want, and she's what they want.
Yeah, and the thing is okay, so this is my perspective. Once they bring in an original lore character from the EU, it's no longer the same character anymore because they don't have the same development or the same arc anymore. It's an alternate
timeline. It's the same way that Thrawn shows up, in Rebels or whatever. It's not the Thrawn that we know.
Yeah, and so there are differences between the brilliance, how Zahn originally written him, versus how he was brought into the new lore. And even with that, the worlds that he comes from are different worlds.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the planets have been changed. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So the planet.
It's just another universe. Yeah, it's just another universe.
Yeah, and so people are like, "Oh, well, they're bringing them back," and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, it's just their name and looks only. Their development is very different. They may have some similar attributes, but it's very different. And so that's why I don't get excited when I see people like
all of it is the shittier version of the original stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all of this. I mean, the sequel trilogy is a very shitty version of some of the ideas from the EU, right? And so it's just like all of this this is like, they just can't admit it. Let's just do that, right? Let's just go do
Yeah.
that. It's like you could have filmed those. It's like of course, I know Kathleen Kennedy's political agenda, personal egos, and all that stuff, throwing the EU out. You know, you could have filmed the Thrawn trilogy as the third. You could have filmed that, right? And
or they could have, like, you know, they wanted Luke to go to exile or go into sabbatical or whatever. So they could have done it after the very last like novels, Crucible, and done that with the Mortis arc or with the Wills, and then introduce Jaina Solo, you know, Fell, and the new characters that they wanted to bring in. And that's including her husband.
They still have the joy of surprise, which is okay. Now you don't know where these characters are going to go. You may, you know, and now people go back and buy all of these 180 books to catch up to episode 7 that could have been done, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and what books have you read already? So what books?
I've read 180 books, but obviously I've read the Thrawn trilogy. I read whatever the one that Dala was in. I've read See, the one I really liked was the one where Shizor was introduced, right? I really liked that with Shadows of the Empire, right? I really liked it. Yeah.
Great segue between the movies. Great novel between the movies and stuff. All right. So
and I love the fact that Shizor was banging his assassin droid, right? I mean, that was long before Lando, right? Shizor this hot, like, you know, android that was killing people, and he's like, well, I had sex with her too and I got bored of it.
Time to move on. Let's look at Leia. Oh my God, that's so bad. I know, it's crazy. It's a crazy.
I'm hoping a hot android. I mean, I think that's kind of where it goes. Whatever. So.
Yeah, my favorite character is Zabi Carrick in and Kyle Katarn. Yes. Let's see here. Let's go on here. Let's see. Filoni probably thinks he was the first person who had some use a standard lightsaber and Shoto lightsaber at the same time. Filoni probably think he was. Oh, okay. Are you talking about a character or just Filoni himself? I don't quite get what you're saying.
Well, he would have been the first one to film it, right? I mean, but it had existed in the
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it did exist in the EU because Luke did use a Shoto or shorter lightsaber with a regular lightsaber. And let's see here. So okay, let me see here, right here. Wedge's character for me is interesting in the EU Rogue Squadron books. Yes, and I'm reviewing them right now just for the fun of it. I do listen to the audibles as well as read the books, and among other books, I have other stuff I love to and I enjoy. And so right now I'm going through the X-Wings right now. Mm-hmm. So very good. I think New Jedi Order or Legacy of the Force works better as sequels over Thrawn trilogy. Yeah, Thrawn I think might be too close and to the timeline, because Thrawn trilogy is basically the same time frame as Mandalorian.
Sure.
Yeah.
About 5 years later, right? It's about 5 years later. So yeah.
Yeah, so both of them are 5 years later. So they're both 9 ABY on the timeline. Guri, yep, that's her name. Let's see here. All right. So with all of this, I love talking culture and I love talking spirituality and stuff like that. And, so like I said, I was curious on what the chakras are like, if your people believed in that same kind of energy force. And, we know that the energy force in Star Wars basically is kind of similar to all of that as well. So, did you guys have some sort of belief in energy within the body, like certain focal points and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a Sufi, which is an Islamic mystic, right? And Sufis is, and so the Sufis have their own, system of where the energy points are, right? Some of them overlap the Western Meridian, some of them overlap Western or the Eastern Chakra, some of them overlap the Chinese meridians, right? And so all of these things are, these are different points of an energy field that I think different traditions focus on for different reasons. They're all there. There's an interesting thing that I was having a conversation about today was I'm a big fan of the Carlos Castaneda books, which purport to tell of ancient Toltec mysticism, right? A Sufi master once said to me, a Turkish Sufi said to me, the Castaneda books are the closest understanding of the hidden world in Western literature. I said, really? He said, it matches what we as Sufis have experienced. And one of the interesting things the Castaneda books talks about is an energy point called the assemblage point, which is essentially our aura, but it's like right behind our back, like our shoulder blade. And it's there. And that's the central point where the energy field is. And wherever it's located determines the universe that you experience, the parallel universe. And the idea of what Castaneda and the other mystics are doing, their things is, they can teach you how to actually shift it into a different part of the energy field, and suddenly you're in another universe. Literally, you're experiencing the reality. So all these infinite realities exist all around us, but our assemblage point is what allows us to see it. And I was having this conversation today that I'm now seeing more and more spiritual traditions talking about this energy field that comes out from behind your shoulder blades. And in the Islamic tradition, there's an very old account that the Prophet Muhammad had what people call a birthmark, but it was actually right between his shoulder blades in that exact location of the assemblage point, that people noticed that and said that was a sign of his mystical prophecy, right? And it's recorded in very early accounts, and it's in the exact same location that Castaneda is talking about, that these other traditions I'm reading about are talking about. So these energy fields are universal, and mystics see them and they emphasize different things based on what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. And, when you look at the, and I'm going into my yogic practice right now, is that when you look at, because there's chakras points everywhere inside your body, but the main ones are the ones that line up and down your spine. And that's what connects you from earth to heaven, or earth to the spirit world. And, so the one that you're talking about, because when we say the main chakras, the ones that line up here, that it doesn't include the front, it also includes the back. So what you're getting at is more or less the heart chakra, are the middle of the 7 chakras that holds them together.
Absolutely.
Stuff. Yeah.
And so, so those are real things. The problem is we're living in a world where we've thrown out the baby with the bathwater. The modern scientific revolution is a response to sort of the superstition of the Middle Ages, and I would say Middle Ages of Europe, because the world went on with science, like China went on with science, Islamic world went on with science, the native country, especially South America, went on with science. It was just Europe was the Dark Ages, right? And so, but as a result of that, we've thrown out anything that we can't quantify using modern tools. And our mystics could quantify. They didn't need to quantify they didn't need to be able to show the energy field or these chakras through any kind of instrumentation. They experienced them directly, and they saw the immediate repercussions of experiencing those. And so they knew they were real. And so the problem, we are in a place where now rediscovering all this wisdom that we just threw out because we couldn't measure it with our limited, tools.
Yeah. And, science, it does complement spirituality, but it doesn't replace it.
Yeah. Well, without spirituality, I'm going to make a comment here about the world. The world we're living in right now is a world of science without spirituality. And it's a world of fear. It's a world of absolute terror and fear and suspicion and paranoia. And everyone is caved in because I've had this conversation. I mean, again, people can have different views about the current events that are happening. I'll share mine. I do. Yes, there is a virus and all that out there. But I also believe the reaction to it has been very extreme and in many times, I think, very intentional and very sinister, and it could take away our sense of spiritual connection with each other. And this is the world that we are creating of science without spirituality. Dr. Mengele was science without spirituality. Now we have a whole planet run by these mini Mengelas who are taking away our humanity, and giving us a paradigm of fear and locking out the other truths. I had this very impassioned argument with a fellow Muslim. A lot of my fellow Muslims have bought into this story of what we're being told about the world right now. And so when the Supreme Court a few weeks ago ruled that New York could not close churches and synagogues and mosques while keeping liquor stores open, this was a lawsuit brought by Christians and Jews, and Muslims were like, we're just going to do whatever the government says. So they didn't participate in it, right? And then some people on Twitter, Muslim groups, like, I can't believe that the Supreme Court is listening to these Christian fanatics and forcing us to open our mosques. I'm like, forcing us to, so you prefer the liquor stores are open, but the mosques are closed. And I'm like, have you ever thought about maybe there's something you get in the holy settings and churches and mosques and sacred places that actually raises the energy field and can protect us from health issues? But they're so disconnected from their own tradition that they're not even considering that maybe a spiritual solution could actually solve some of these medical issues.
Yeah, and I'll just expand on that. And this is like you learning from your past history. This is what they did to my people to get us on reservations and to get us to assimilate, is that they gave us alcohol so that we would numb ourselves, so we wouldn't practice and we would feel hopeless.
Exactly. And then they knew that you would be addicted to it because it wasn't part of your culture. So you didn't have to it.
Exactly. So we have Club Star Wars here. A question for you both. Do you feel there is more excitement put back into Star Wars since the final episode of Mandalorian? A more pushback against KK's Lucasfilm Limited in particular? I'm on the fence about that. I'm skeptical, but I know a lot of people are, and I can only speak for myself. And how I feel should not make you feel any worse about how you feel. And that's a big thing right now that's going on in the community, is that there's a lot, an anti-EU movement came, just budded a little bit more with, like be careful how you talk about the EU, might hurt my feelings. Or, you EU elitists, blah, 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 blah. And it just started going after it. Just this type of rhetoric just started happening after that last episode. And I got, I wouldn't say caught up in it, but yes, people did, get really upset. And I did not do anything to target anybody, say anything particularly wrong. Yeah. I just shared compare and contrast. And I think because everybody wants to believe or is hoping and putting hope in that this is correcting. But yes, if it is, the thing is, it doesn't still disavow the passion for the EU and what's good for the EU either. And I think that the EU is a good learning.
Understood what you were saying. A lot of people they thought you were putting down the efforts that Forever was doing rather than pointing out, that's nice, but look at all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so what do you think about that?
Well, I think that, again, I've said this on other podcasts or other video casts, which is that I believe everything that Disney does, including under the current situation, Mandalorian, is fan fiction, right? I believe anything that's not done by George Lucas is fan fiction, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe the EU, which was under his aegis, is canon because it was under his aegis. And so some of the fan fiction is good. I think Rogue One is a good film. It has some lore errors, but it's a good film. I think what I'm seeing in The Mandalorian is that some of it's quite decent, and apparently it culminates in something really good for a lot of people. So, but it's fan fiction. So I just take it with a grain of, somebody who, a corporation, a Hollywood studio trying to make money on this thing, writing fan fiction and bumbling its way through until it gets to figure out what can make it money, right? And now making it money is going to be closer to the Lucas vision than not. But to answer the earlier question, I do believe that Disney is aware. I mean, from what I understand, that right after the word got out that Luke was back in such a magnificent way in The Mandalorian, that their subscription skyrocketed. I know because I subscribed the next morning, the moment I heard about it. I subscribed the next morning. And after 3 years of refusing to give them $1. So they are aware from their pocketbook what this is. And my understanding is also, we got a little fire engine going by, so ignore that. Very loud. It's very loud. It's loud and slow in front of my window. Okay, God bless.
Life is still going on.
As we want to say, but my understanding is that after this nonsense with Mr. Hidalgo happened, people unsubscribed. So they got those figures, right? They suddenly they could see on this date, massive subscription increase to Disney Plus, more than ever in history. Suddenly, Mr. Hidalgo puts on the fans, and it goes back down like the next day. They know that. So they're like, this is messing with our money, man. And that's all this is about. It's about making money. It's not about making good Star Wars. And now they're figuring out we got to actually make money here. And this year, horrible as this year was a blessing to that, because before Hollywood was all about, making money, but we got to keep the political agenda and Trump and blah, blah, blah. Now they're like, man, we're about to go under as a business, right? Our theme parks are closed. Our ships aren't going anywhere. We are dying. We don't care about Trump, politics, white man. We just want to make money, because otherwise we're all going to be out of work. And now, so as a result of that, that's their only focus at Disney. So I think they're going to stay on this track.
Yeah, exactly. And, Drain Bamaj, I guess that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I'm so used to having my name butchered. But how people, I've been called Alora, Aloha, Elhora, Olorca for many spells of my names from, people trying to write it out and stuff. So I understand that. So it's hard for me to consider anything Disney canon after spending 35 years with the EU. And the thing is like, even between the two first sequel trilogies and beyond, before the buyout and stuff, the EU kept Star Wars alive. And it was the hard, I guess you could say the hardcore fans, or maybe the EU fans, whether they're gamers, comics, novelists, are all in between that or whatever. They kept Star Wars alive. And so there's a lot, and I'm not saying, like to pay homage to everybody who does, EU channels or whatever. I'm just saying that that's just the reality, is that, without the EU, we may not be getting what we're getting now. We may not have the extensive lore that we have now. All
their ideas are bastardized, bad versions of the EU. So those decades of EU material gave them the material that they are sloppily doing. It's not like they came up with this stuff on their own.
Exactly. And it's beautifully done and stuff, and it's magnificent. And it goes back to the mythos, and that's why I love it so much. And that's why I love, having this conversation with Kamran, is that, we come from spiritual based cultures. We look at all spiritualities as well, because there's a lot of similarities. If I have a more in-depth, talk with Kamran, then I can, find very huge similarities with my native culture, like Lakota. I can't speak for all native culture because they're all different in their own aspects as well. But we could find similarities, and we just, talked about that with the energy points in the body, and that's even with Star Wars, the Force. They did, come up midichlorians, which is basically energy points where the Force access, the body, the person can access the Force. And so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and in defense of midichlorians, because initially when I first saw it, I was like, "Whoa, what the hell are doing this?" But as I matured, when I was first watching it, I was like, "Where are they going with this?" But later, as I matured as a person and deep in my own spiritual knowledge, the reality is that any spiritual system that we've developed, especially the Chinese, they attempt to quantify. It's not just the general mystical Tao. There's a lot of that's how Chinese medicine comes from. It becomes very practical. It gets down to physical things, right? That you have the energy field, but how does that affect, the Chinese medical healing? How does it change the body? And so, of course, any advance, this is culture for thousands of years has been exploring the Force. They're going to be able to quantify it in a physical way, and the midichlorians is a reflection of that science. And that science that is then lost because Luke doesn't know any of it, and eventually has to relearn all of it.
Exactly. And that's what's fascinating about Luke Skywalker's arc. And I think I've told you this before. Luke Skywalker is the character that got me into Star Wars and got me into the EU. I wanted to know exactly what happened to him after he declared himself and became a Jedi, and promised, Yoda or his two masters to carry on the on the knowledge and create the new order. And so that's why, like this displace with what happened to him in the sequel trilogy really broke my heart. But then also it angered me or upset me enough to say, you know what, I'm going to, open my YouTube channel for a George Lucas era of Star Wars and share what is beautiful behind that, and share the legacy of Luke that, George intended. And so that's why I'm here. And, so we have, Luke creating this new order and rediscovering and correcting some mistakes, and we see that in history, even with spirituality, we see people step up and correct or recreate stuff.
Mystics are not guaranteed to go the right way, because they're exploring this complex other realm, which has many layers and has dark and light and how you synthesize it. And so mystics can become misguided. In the Islamic tradition, the Sufi tradition, there's two kinds of mystics. There's the mystics that are sort of like the wacky mystics who, go out there and they're, there's a famous one, Lala, who was famous for dancing naked in the streets of India, right, in the 15th century. and so those are the wacky mystics. But then that's always on the fringe. The Sufism mystical tradition has survived because most mystics follow traditional Islamic law, right? They follow all the traditional rituals, and they present it as mysticism is about transcending religion. It's about transcending rituals and all that stuff. But in order to actually convey that knowledge in this world, it's like a lamp needs a crystal around it to protect it from the flame from going out from the wind. And so the culture, the tradition, the rules of society are how you preserve the mystical truth. So in the Sufi tradition, most of us are very strict on following Islamic ritual and law because that preserves the mystical truth. Otherwise, it just gets blown aside as times change. And those that don't have that can become very misguided and can become very dangerous, essentially magicians with all this power and nothing core holding them. So you need to have this conflict within and growth within mystical traditions. And one group goes astray, like I think the Jedi did go astray. Even in the EU, there's a realization of that. And Luke is like, it's not about transcending emotion. It's about channeling these things properly. And when you let go of emotions, you can be manipulated because you can't let go of emotion, which is what happened to Anakin.
Exactly. And then I'll go back. Have you read the Revenge of the Sith novelization?
I read the first one of the three, and I've seen excerpts, and every excerpt I've seen from the Revenge of the Sith is like a work of poetry. I mean, so I have the book. I mean, it's like, every time people show me a quote, I'm like, that's incredible writing.
It is. the Audible, if you get that, it's unabridged, so it's the whole story, and you have it with, you know, Star Wars sound effects and all of that. It's magnificent. But the book, it doesn't leave anything out from the book, the novelization. So my point I'm getting to is not only read it, pick it up and read it, but at one point Yoda realizes that he's been training over 800 years. He's been training his Jedi to fight the Sith that he knew of when he was younger.
So,
so there was no change. Yeah. There was no change. And so he realized that a new order needs to come about. And so basically, and I'm getting chills about this when I'm talking about it, but basically he says after the twins are born, is that Leia and Luke will be the ones to step up and recreate the new Jedi Order.
So, which is another failure of the sequel trilogy because they don't do that, right? And so, because that's a setup for it, which is perfect. And but there, you know, one of the things that probably didn't get me the job on Clone Wars was this level of understanding that you're expressing about because I talked about that. I said, you know, the Sith are actually not the villains of the story. And I said that in the interview. I said the Sith are there. They are the Force's way of preventing stagnation. You know, they are, because the light can become all hippy dippy, sitting there meditating on your ass and not taking up. And that's what happens. And, you know, that's how the galaxy gets corrupted, because these guys are sitting there, you know, talking all this smack about the Force when there's corruption all around them that they're not fixing, to the point that, you know, one dude can outsmart everybody and take over the whole galaxy and get the galaxy to fight itself, because they're not doing their jobs, because by then, in my view, the Jedi had become pretentious schmucks. Right? They're just talking about this stuff because they're disconnected from their emotion. And the Sith are the Force's way of fixing that. And the Sith are not the villains. They can do things we perceive as villainous because we don't want our planet to be blown up and all of us dying, right? So that's not fun. But the Sith are there for the Force to wake people up. And that's their role. That's why they're always the dark side will always arise. And it is necessary. You know, it is a necessary thing. Otherwise, the light becomes corrupt.
Exactly. And that's what Luke did perfectly well once you get into post Return of the Jedi and him recreating the new Jedi Order and stuff, is that there was emotion allowed, but not so much where it will cloud your judgment and stuff like that. You know,
balance. You know, that's something, you know, they didn't understand, you know, they didn't understand, as Yoda said, maybe we misunderstood the prophecy about the chosen one that's going to bring balance, because they didn't realize they're the ones that are out of balance. They're out of balance, and so the Force is sending Anakin to wipe them out and put things back in balance. He's going to go to an extreme, and Luke is going to bring him back to the center, and then going to continue that tradition.
Exactly. So we have Willie. We're with question 2 both. O.G.Starwars, if Disney Star Wars adapted or took things from the EU, but let the EU still be canon, would that mend the damage of the ST did? I have like I said, they can bring it in, but if they don't fully bring in or recanonize the EU, and, you know, that would mean that they would have to get rid of a lot of their stuff they already recreated. And are they willing to make that step? If anything, it may be just logical for the movies. You know, that's just how it goes.
They're not going to go that far. I think they're never going to, you know, I think, because most of these people, remember, it's just a corporation, and most people are not very smart. They're just bean counters or people wanting to hang out at parties and bang movie stars, and they're not thinking about a profound legacy of spiritual truth like George Lucas was, right? Favreau may be thinking about that, but he's wisely trying to manage a system of people that are not that smart as him. And so they're never going to fix all of it, but he's going to try to get it closer and closer to the Lucas line. And it may just be this infinite thing where you never get it to the Lucas line, but it's this goal that you have to keep aiming for.
Yeah, we're never going to get what was established before, but it might be not as bastardized as it has been. And that's how I see that. So Terminus, Cameron, when are you coming on to Dark Council?
You better talk Abu Nas there, bro.
Abu Nas, if you're still listening, we have a request. Oh, and I'm behind on this, and I think I have a super chat right here. I didn't see come in. Let's see here. Is this? Oh, yeah. AJ Journeyman. Oh, thank you for the Canadian $5. Hi, OG. A question for you. Cameron, Stig, too. I think if Stig's still in here. Should George have held on and passed his work to his kids like Tolkien did with his work to his son? I don't think the kids wanted it.
Yeah, I don't think they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And then his new family, or his, wife and his, his child, his young child, he wanted to just focus on, his family and give him the full attention and work on his art, filming and all that stuff on his own without having any, deadlines and all that stuff. So that's my understanding.
I mean, I'm not George Lucas. I hope to meet the man while he's still with us, and who knows his journey. He's a billionaire. He's a multi-billionaire. Yeah. He financed the prequels from his own pocket, right?
Yeah.
Why did he not make the sequels when he could have made maybe he was just so damaged by some of the people's reactions to the prequels that he just lost his heart. But, I could have imagined in the 10 years later in the 2000s, he could have financed sequels with all the cast. They were not as old as they were in the 2020s, right? But they would have been old enough to play some of the. But who knows what happened to him, because he had the money to do it. And one of the great things that I still don't understand of why he sold it, because he didn't need to. He was a multi-billionaire. He could have set up a successor system that would have survived and kept Lucasfilm independent for generations, right? He could have done that. Yeah. I don't know why he didn't.
I think part of his reasons, and this is just going off of what I've heard in one of his interviews, is that he's very hands-on and he will step in and try to take control. And so even if he did have a successor while he was in the sidelines and stuff, he would have a hard time not being involved.
That would have been a good thing. And eventually he's going to pass on to the Force, right, someday, and hope that's many years away. Stay with us, George. But so I'd rather have him do that, because he's really proven right over time, Over time, people have come to like Jar Jar Binks. Over time, I didn't like episode 1. I love episode 1 compared to the sequel trilogy. I will watch it day in and day out compared to that garbage, right?
Yeah.
And so, I loved episode 2 and 3, and he's been proven right. His thing is he's ahead of the curve. He's always been ahead of the curve.
Yes, he has.
He's 50 years ahead of humanity.
Exactly. Like even with his filmmaking and all that, he is one of those groundbreakers, and people don't realize that when they, and mind you, I love the PT. I'm an OG. I mean, OT, that's my thing. But when the PT came around, oh my God, I still loved it. I did recognize some mistakes in it, of course. I'm not like, because I like something, I don't think anything's wrong with it, because, there's no such thing as perfect. And we can say the creator is the only thing that makes things perfect, but yet
he keeps tweaking them. He keeps fixing his movies because he doesn't think they're perfect.
Exactly. And I've had debates on Twitter about, like, people are upset with him, doing this special editions and stuff, and that is blasphemy, and he shouldn't have done that. He has no reason to do that. I'm like, he's the creator to these things. He has every right to come back and say, hey, I'm going to add these added scenes, because then it helps us understand the PT a little bit more, like with the celebrations at the end of Return of the Jedi. And I'm going to add a little bit of here and there, or make these figures look better. So he had every right to go in and do that, mind you, if we would like it or not. And that's me as a painter. I go back, and a piece of work is never done. It's never perfect. It's never completed. It's just when we decide to say, okay, I think it's going to be where it's going to be, and it's perfect the way, or it's nice the way it is, I can always go back to any one of my paintings and say, oh crap, I need to do this. Or I need
as a novelist, I'm always like, I should change that line, whatever. I mean, and maybe I'll put out another edition of my books and that line will get changed, or I'll fix out that chapter there. But, Da Vinci said it. I think it was Da Vinci, but some famous artist said, that art is never completed. It's just abandoned.
Yeah, I think it was Da Vinci, because I remember reading that in my classes for art, and it's never completed. Nothing's never done. And I think that's the same with creation, like the overworld world. Nothing's ever done. We're ever evolving, like life is just a spiral, and this goes into spirituality. We're built on spirals. Even our DNA is built on spirals.
Trying to teach the Jedi. The Jedi thought it was all done. Right.
Yeah, exactly. They thought it was all done, but and so that's where Yoda, realized his mistakes, that he was blindsided on teaching, because they thought the Sith was extinct, so they were just teaching the ways that they were taught when he was younger.
And the Sith would all destroy each other, and that's why and that's why the rule of two was invented, because they. They understood, we're all going to destroy each other, and the genius of the rule of two is so brilliant, because if you think about it, it's absolutely self-sacrificing. Every Sith Lord has to find an apprentice that has the potential to one day kill him or her, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking for the person, the ideal situation is to be struck down by your apprentice, I mean, think about it. That's the ultimate self-sacrifice because you're sacrificing yourself for the strength of the lineage.
Yeah. Hashtag Sith did nothing wrong. So if you had a choice, if you were to be a Jedi or a Sith, what would you be? And if it's a Jedi, what era of Star Wars would you want to be a Jedi? And maybe with the Sith as well, if you kind of know a little bit more of the Sith history.
Well, I mean, I think while as a Sufi, I should be a Jedi. The truth is I am a Sith personality guy. I've always been that person. I mean, I'm that in this industry. I'm a constant troublemaker. I'm a constant Sith or catalyst. They're there to create change, right? And they're there to speak unwelcome truths that we are uncomfortable and not willing to face about reality of the universe, right? Such as we're filled with passion and desire, and that's okay, right? And so my job, within the Sufi tradition, like I said, there's two kinds of Sufis, right? There's the sort of relaxed, that's the vast majority of the Jedi Sufi, very relaxed, peaceful, hide their abilities and all that stuff. And there's always what we call the Majnun Sufis, the crazy Sufis, which are the ones that are out there trying to turn the world upside down to wake it up. And I've always been that character. And so I'm a Sith by definition.
He's a Sith Sufi. Say that like 5 times together.
A Sith Sufi, because you need them. Without them, you sit there and you stagnate and you become delusional.
Yeah. Whoops. What did I do? Okay. All right. So we have AJ Journeyman. Qui-Gon's line in episode 1, there is always a bigger fish, is a good summation of how Palpatine pulled a fast one in the prequels. Yes. And
again, the bigger Sith was one. The bigger fish was one Sith. That's the proof of their religion, which is just 2 of these dudes took out the whole galaxy.
Exactly. And it took the Sith 1,000 years to reinvent themselves into the rule of 2, because they realized their mistakes as a Sith order and the Brotherhood and all that, and how they were killing each other from the inside. Jedi really didn't need to do it because they were killing themselves from the inside, because of power and stuff, and so they needed to reinvent themselves.
And it was a perfection of the ideology, because if the Sith's belief is the Force is constantly evolving, and the purpose of life is to evolve the Force to higher power. It's not just by you becoming powerful, it's the Force is becoming powerful, right? Or manifesting more of its power. Then the rule of 2 is the perfect way to do it, which is one that has the highest developed understanding of the Force in that moment, and then someone who can then actually defeat that person and then take it to the next level. So it's a constant climbing up the pyramid, which is forcing the Sith to evolve, right? And not just a Sith, it's forcing the Force to evolve. And so it's a philosophy that's proven itself.
And we have A.G. Journeyman here. I think Lucas was overcome by pride when he made the prequels, as I think he resented people saying Krishna, his ex, Kurtz are the real heroes of Star Wars when he is the source. There's that push and pull I heard and stuff, but in reality, like even with Empire Strikes Back, Lucas was the one that went in and said this needs to be taken out of here, or this needs to be done, that needs to be done, even though he wasn't like in there all the time, in the studio all the time while they're creating. He was the one that proved everything and even went back and did some editing and stuff himself. From what I remember from watching behind the scenes for Empire Strikes
ultimately
Back.
He released even the first movie, he was the final say. So yes, his wife was a brilliant editor who fixed a lot of things, but he was the wise filmmaker who said, that cut works, let's go with it.
Exactly. And I think people forget to realize that he was the one who was saying, okay, this is the cut we're releasing, and I approve all of this. So we don't know behind the scenes except for what they show in the documentaries and stuff. But it is common sense to know that his final say is what had happened and what we got in Star Wars. Whether he was working on it like fully with the prequel trilogy, or having his hired people to come in and work in his faith and under his scripts or his storyline and stuff like that. So. The rule of 1 is also great. So I don't know. Have you gotten into Legacy of the Force?
No, I have not. So help me understand. What is the rule of 1 of an adjustment on the Sith philosophy to something else?
Yeah. So it's another evolution of the Sith as well. And we do have, and this is like 140 years after Luke Skywalker. So we have Ben Skywalker. Then I think there's 2 generations in between, or 1 generation, and then we have the son and the father that gets murdered and the brother, so we have like 3 generations after Luke.
Okay.
So yeah, so and it's very interesting. Darth Crate, one Sith. Yeah, so it's another fun one to look into. And again, we get the evolution because we do have another purge that had happened with the Jedi because of that, because of the evolution.
Sure.
You know, so it's kind of the same, but it's not. We get to see, you know, it's about evolution, and the Sith are the ones that are evolving quicker than the Jedi. Still.
Well, and so you know, is Vader or Palpatine wrong when they say, "Let me show you the dark side is the true side of the Force," because it keeps coming back and it keeps pushing things higher. So maybe ultimately, that's why I'm a Sith. Ultimately, that side is evolution is the truth of life. Life is always changing. So the idea of life stasis is a false statement of the cosmos.
And it doesn't really get into like the evolution of the Jedi too much with that, but we do see that we do have a new order of Sith that was reborn. And so I find that fascinating. You know, I wouldn't say like the Sith is basically the right side of the Force either. I think that
that's why you have a balance, right? Because the Sith have a destructive energy. It's uncontrolled passion eventually destroys itself. So you need that other side to control it.
Yeah, like there's, you know, like within Native culture, we, you know, like in some of them, they have like beings that are chaos that create change. And we need that. We need that chaos to create change. And I think this is, if you want to look at this in a more positive way with what's gone on with C-19 and stuff like that, is that we're going through a chaos to create change in the world.
It's a revelation period. Now we know the truth. I like to say that 2020 was ironically the year where everyone's mask came off, right? You know, in God's sense of humor, everyone's wearing a mask, and as a result, everyone's true face is revealed. And I've gotten to know things about myself, about my loved ones, about my friends, about my enemies. I've gotten to know things about the world, and my views on politics changed in 2020.
Yeah.
I got to see this person doing this, that person doing that, and I didn't expect them to do that. And so all of that, this whole thing has been unmasking revelation. Now we've got a process to go. What do we do with that information?
Yeah. And I think it's, I think that for myself, I've seen history repeating from my ancestors, and that one of the realizations is that nothing was learned from past mistakes. And so we're reliving it in a different way, but we are reliving it. Just like I said, with you saying that they're not allowing churches and all the spiritual housings to stay open and stuff, but they're allowing liquor stores to stay open. So that's an example with that, is that we are in through a phase 2 of, did you learn from your past, and how can you learn from it, and how can you
change it? The adversary learned from the past. That's why it's intentional. The people that did to your community, spreading alcohol and shutting down its spiritual traditions and dividing families, are now doing that on a global scale because you were the test market for that.
Yeah. And
do an ancient tradition, and they said, let's do this to everybody now.
Yeah. And what do you think about cultural appropriation? Because that's also been
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. All culture is appropriation.
I
don't know. It doesn't mean it's meaningless. We're all, culture is water. It's always evolving. And if someone wants to learn from somebody else and adopt, you know, aspects of their culture into their own, that's part of the evolutionary process of culture. That's a good thing. I'm sure the native tribes all interact long before the Europeans showed up. They all interacted with each other, learned music from each other, had different styles of clothing from each other. That's evolution.
Yeah. Like there's like several Northern Plains tribes, that's including mine, that we all have Sundance ceremonies. And so, but the origin is
somebody else, right? So yeah. But that's healthy. See, this is the thing that I have with the woke culture of today. It is absolutely destructive to the human condition. All these things that are healthy, such as human beings interacting with each other, learning each other, and out of their respect for something beautiful they've learned, they then incorporate that into their lives, whether it's dress, food, music. That's good. Human beings smiling at each other is a good thing. Human beings being in a room together is a good thing. Human beings worshiping together is a good thing. Everything that is happening is to destroy the human condition. Everything that's happening is taking away the basic things that keep us human and keep us rising spiritually and pushing us down below the animals. I mean, I walk around in the park, you know, outside my home, everyone's wearing a mask, everyone's staring. I will wear a mask and whatever I'm required to in a store, blah, blah. But in the park, I will not, right? Or on the beach. Yeah. And I'm walking down there and I keep my distance from all these scared weirdos, but they're all staring at me with rage. And then I see the birds flying over them. I saw that yesterday. All these people look at me, and with their, you know, thing. And then the birds are chirping over them. The birds are free. These people aren't free.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. All right, we have Harley Mitchell with $20. Thank you so much for the super chat. I just appreciate every single one of you guys that are still hanging on in here with this conversation with Kamran here. Hi, OG and Kamran. Have a drink on me. I'm still off Twitter, but I'm glad to see you both fighting the good fight. Fortune to you both in the new year. Hashtag Sith life. So I wonder how many people said, Sith. I am more of a Jedi. So, and I don't know if that's
How do
because
you define Jedi? I mean, I don't think you're one of the stagnant Jedi of the Council. I don't think you're that.
no, I'm more of a Luke Skywalker era, the New Jedi Order, where there's evolution. Mm-hmm.
Balanced Jedi who's trying to learn wisdom from all truth. And maybe even the Sith have a little bit of wisdom, like it's okay to be in touch with your emotions. And maybe that's something they incorporate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's see here. Let's move on here. Let's see. Revan was right about the Force.
What was
Revan's
philosophy? I mean, I certainly know Revan, but I wouldn't be able to quantify. What is his philosophy as you understand it?
Basically, have to go back because it's been a while since I've, I'm not too versed into KOTOR or Knights of the Old Republic era because I hardly play the games, but I do, know the novels behind it and stuff like that. And he believes that there is basically balance. He's the one that kind of like Vader. He went dark and then went back to light.
Okay.
So yeah,
the whole journey, which is the journey of life.
Short. Yeah, in short, unlimited power. But that's where the Sith goes wrong, because once you're like George Lucas said, like this, like the dark side is like greed and wanting to get things, possess things and stuff like that. And then, then the Jedi are like the very opposite as well. And so, there has to be that, again, that kind of balance, I guess you could say on in life.
Well, the thing is this, the Sith are seeking unlimited power. The Force is unlimited power, right? But you have to be evolved enough to be able to hold that kind of energy. And so and that's why all the Sith become physically decrepit. Their bodies eventually somehow or another become in bad shape, right? It's because it's too much. It's overwhelming you because your physical vessel cannot handle that level of power that you think you want.
Yeah.
You're not yet evolved.
Exactly. Alex Krogan, Hollywood appealing to another socialist dictatorship with China after their last attempt with Nazi Germany is definitely a repeat.
I don't know that they were ever appealing to Nazi Germany. I mean, I don't know what that's because I remember. I mean, we were making Casablanca. The Nazis were the villains before we entered the war. So I don't look. I'm not. Anyone who follows my Twitter feed knows my politics. I'm not a supporter of the Chinese Communist Party. I'm not woke. I'm not that liberal. But I honestly don't know that that's a fair analogy. I think Hollywood was pretty anti-Nazi from the beginning. They weren't anti. No, I think even then they were pretty anti-communist from the beginning. I mean, I don't know that there was ever any sympathy for Stalin. I think we're projecting our current woke world back in time, and I don't know that that's fair. I think that the Hollywood moguls of the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, just wanted to make money, and they were very shrewd people. And they, I'll tell you one thing, for example, I know for a fact that if there's a great book called An Empire of Their Own, which is by a Jewish scholar about the Jewish community's establishment of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
One of the interesting points it made is that in the 1930s and early 40s, the early Zionist movement went to LA and to Hollywood to try to raise money for Jewish settlement in Palestine, right? And to create the state of Israel. And the moguls, we're talking about all the Jewish moguls, all these guys who were the head moguls, threw them out. They literally would not allow these guys to have organizational meetings in LA. They said, what are you trying to mess with it? Two things. We're making real success here as a Jewish community in Hollywood. We're becoming influential in entertainment. We're not interested in going to some desert in the Middle East, number one. Number two is we want to sell movies to Arabs, so we don't want to create any drama over there, right? And so they threw all those guys out. Now today, everyone I work with in Hollywood is very pro-Israel and couldn't give a crap about Muslims, right? That's evolved and changed. But to project our current values back in time to those people, I don't think it's correct.
Yeah, and you know what? Even George Lucas, he even like some of the background towards the empire was basic Nazi and Vietnam and all that stuff as well.
I don't think Nazis have been sympathetic in the industry. I mean, just go watch Casablanca again, and we weren't even in the war when that movie's made. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a fun one to watch. That's a classic to watch as well. So that guy says society became too complicated, and shifts need to occur to knock that complacent behavior off ourselves and awaken us. True awakening. And that's the thing is, okay, so I've learned that Kamran, he he knows some star knowledge as well, astrology, numbers, shifting, and all that. Me, I'm getting into that. In fact, I am studying it so I can, give people astrology readings and understand those numbers and stuff. And in even my own culture, we already have our own astronomy to where, the names of like the Milky Way, certain points of the Milky Way and stuff like that are named differently to us. And that when you look at certain aspects of the Milky Way, it reflects down into our sacred Black Hills, sacred above, sacred below. So there's landmarks that line up, from the ground with the sacred spots in the sky. Yeah.
So I mean, the people don't understand. Like, how can you believe you're a smart guy, Cameron? How can you believe in astrology and stuff like that? I'm like, you hit the exact mystical thing, which is as above, so below. Because the entire universe is actually a mirror of the human mind, and vice versa. So the constellations reflect human consciousness, and vice versa. That's a mystical truth that you're not going to be able to quantify with astronomy or with science, but it's also true. It's just objective. So
and my people map the universe and map the skies and the stars without the technology even created back then by the Eastern or European culture and stuff like that, and even Middle East culture, when all that started mapping out with coming technology. We didn't have that, but we still map the stars. We still place them accurately too. So that's very interesting, and all that. So with that, you did talk about the shift and change and numbers and stuff. So if you want to go ahead and elaborate on that a little bit more.
From a numerological, I study astrology and numerology, and from a numerological perspective, last year was a 4-year. I mean, that comes from just adding the numbers of the year. 2020, 0 to 2 plus 2 is 4, so it's a 4 year. And 4 years are years of restriction, of struggle, of hard work, of facing obstacles, and of feeling a little bit trapped. And guess what? The whole planet was that on a scale we haven't seen in at least a few generations, right? I don't think. I mean, people living through World War II would be like, man, I'll take this over that, right? I don't want to live through World War II, right? So like, you guys about lockdown, we're having genocide here, right? So it was bad. But what we're now in is a 5-year, 2021. 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. And 5 in the numerological system represents freedom, represents rebellion, it represents surprise changes, it represents sensuality and sexuality and living, right? And these are not, by the way, these ideas I'm sharing are very old in the Western tradition. The numerological system we have today is the one that was transmitted to us by Pythagoras. Pythagoras was primarily a mystic. He's famous for all this mathematical stuff that he did, including the Pythagorean theorem, right? That's all done in service of his mysticism. He was primarily a mystic, and he was conveying knowledge, a little bit of the knowledge that the Egyptian priests gave to him to get it out publicly. The Egyptians knew more than they shared with Pythagoras, and that's all we've got left now. And yet the system works. I studied Pythagorean numerology in particular. He had some very specific kinds of numerology, which will tell you how the next 3 months of your life are going to be based on certain things. I studied it, and I found that my life consistently follows those patterns. I was shocked by it. And so it's because the universe is vibration and numbers, which is what Pythagoras conveyed from the ancient Egyptian priests.
Yeah. Okay. And so, like with people, I don't talk too much about spirituality with a lot of people in the community. So this is probably something like, oh my God, she's talking about this stuff. But if some of my background, I do share hints of it on Twitter, if you haven't noticed. And I find it very, it's like we need to find our connection back with the universe and the earth.
Absolutely.
I think that, humans are very disconnected and lost right now.
Well, that was the lesson. Is like I said, we've gotten to a place where we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We're under the rule of a million Dr. Mengelas, right? Who are imposing what they think is science without any spiritual connection, right? And so now we are understanding that if we don't have a spiritual connection, we're going to misunderstand the basics of the physical world as well, right? Which includes health issues, includes diseases, viruses, right? If we don't understand what's happening in nature itself, we're going to create a false nature, which is what we've done worldwide.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where it goes back to Star Wars as well, because we recognize the fact that, it's being recreated and basically in a nihilistic way. So we're taking the spirituality and everything that the groundwork that George laid down has been removed with the sequel trilogy. And we have a lot of disconnect there and stuff. And I think people who watch that and start slowly seeing that, I think it's a bigger picture with what's going on today, so if we're seeing our mythologies of these fantasy fictions being deconstructed and we don't like that, then we need to take a look out at the bigger picture of the world and look at the people who are reconstructing these mythos and saying,
you hit something very profound there, Laura, because the reason I became when I watched Last Jedi, I couldn't sleep that night. I was up all night. I was upset, right? Because I had been watching for years this pathology of this anti-human woke ideology enter more and more in the writers' rooms on the shows I was working on. I had to listen to nonsense being promoted, and it went from being the weirdo minority, not in the racial minority, the minority of the room that said stuff like this, to become increasingly louder and louder, and we have to, the white man is the devil stuff started and all that stuff, and I was watching it hijacking television especially after Trump was elected, and then when this happened, I was like, that's it. They've destroyed the fundamental myth of modern times, of Western, not just global. It's global. Star Wars is global. It's not Western civilization. It's a global story, right? And they're destroying the fundamental modern myth, the modern Odyssey, the modern Iliad of our time. And they're letting this evil, what I had seen as an evil subversive ideology, take over in my own environment. I couldn't sleep because I was like, I felt the world was about to go through tumult. What's happening at Star Wars was a predecessor to what was going to happen to the whole planet once you take the basis of our humanity.
Yeah. And that's why I say, just with one character, there might be hope with that. But in the long run, we have to fight for the bigger picture. And that's the mythos of it. That's what was established underneath the foundation of it. Whether, Anakin, he was the Greek tragedy. You could say he was a Greek tragedy, and who came back and helped create a balance. And his son was the catalyst to that. And then from that launched Luke off to create, the new order in honor of not only his father, but, his masters and the Jedi that came before him. And, so we see that evolution there. And hopefully now, with people start waking up, and I'm not saying woke, I'm saying waking up. Yes. There's a difference.
Very different. The people call themselves woke are actually deeply asleep. That's the irony.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I see that too. So the people who are waking up and realizing we need to reconnect back with the earth, we need to reconnect back with our own selves, our own truth, our own centers, and that reconnection to the earth and to the universe is connecting back into your center. And and in my culture, we have that belief, and it's called Hochokan. And that means, basically the center of your spirituality. We do a lot of things in circles. And so, our altars are always in the center. So when we have Sundance, we have the sacred tree that's in the center. When we do sweat lodges, we have the sacred pit where we, heat up the rocks. That's the center. My name that I was gifted in my Lakota name is Io Chokawin, which it means woman in the center.
Wow, beautiful. And it's who you are. And I actually want to say what you're doing in fighting for George Lucas's original vision, even when we're all like, oh my God, Lucas back with the green light.
Yeah, it was great. Right? It was great, right?
Yeah, even the reason that what you're doing is so important is talking again about how Star Wars is a microcosm of the greater forces that are playing out in society right now, which is that we can settle for mediocrity just because we're so beaten down. Like at the end this year, people might just say, all right, give me this stupid vaccine, and I'll wear masks most of the time. Can you just leave me alone? And we'll settle for that over this horrific closing in of making us feeling like we're being buried alive, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to settle for that. The old world that we've thrown away, like we threw away the EU, was still the better world. And it's still the proper way forward. So it's very important that you are the voice of this, because if that voice doesn't exist, Favreau won't have the energy to fight to bring it closer. I believe Favreau shares your vision, and he's trying to get the line closer back to that, and he may never be able to do it. But if people like you stopped saying it, then there's no impetus for Disney to allow him to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then that's what I tell people, because I'm like, okay, so, look beyond just bringing Luke back and correcting his character. Look beyond that. Our fight's not done here. The reality, it's not done here. And once we see like different course corrections, at least to the mythos, I'm not expecting them to bring back EU into their timeline. I would love them to expand and have a separate timeline for the Legends or EU, where they finish off the stories that were being created before the buyout and stuff like that, and giving.
And that may happen. They may just, from a point of view, they're like, we should just create this other universe where we do this stuff and make money on it. It may happen.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not saying, let's just go ahead and decanonize everything that they're building upon and put EU in their original lore. No, because I do recognize that there are fans that like what's being developed in Disney Star Wars, whether it's the ST, whether it's the EU, their EU, whether, like, of course, the Mandalorian or what's coming up, or even because there's people who love Rebels, and that's Disney's Lucasfilm. And then, what's the other things that are coming. So I recognize that. And me as a person who everything was taken away from and saying that no longer exists anymore in the lore, I don't really want that to happen to them. I just want course correction.
And I do believe
better storytelling.
And I think ultimately the direction, and this may be a generational thing of the next, because I don't think Star Wars is going anywhere. I mean, I think now that Favreau has put it at least pointing towards Lucas, right? The Lucas vision, it's now going to be on track and it's going to be okay. And over the course of this generation, once they've gotten to a place where essentially the woke fanatics are silenced and we're able to make good Star Wars again that feels authentic, then they will start saying, okay, we're now making money on this thing. We can breathe, because they haven't made money on this now in a decade, right? Okay, we're making profit now. This is now, people are coming to our parks. It's great. Now let's make more money on it, because we have 180 untapped novels to play with. But they're not going to get there until they have people coming to the parks again and they don't feel under siege.
Yeah, exactly. And mind you, George did make this company make money off of it. But the difference is that he had a vision and he cared about telling that vision, and he cared about the mythos that he was creating. And it worked well for him. But we're not talking about Georgia. We're talking about people who are disconnected from that vision. They don't have the same vision. And it's corporate.
They don't have the values. I mean, they're not mystic. I mean, he's a mystic. I mean, like I said, he studied Taoism, and he studied martial arts. He studied Sufism. People don't. There's a lot of Arabic in that's used in the actual languages of Star Wars. Tatooine is a town in Tunisia that my sister visited, where they actually filmed Tatooine. The set is still there. My sister went to it. Right, it's out in the desert, but Tatooine itself is an actual town, and the Jedi robes are Middle Eastern robes of the local populace of Tatooine. And so he had a lot of respect for Sufism and Islamic culture, because it's clear to me, he knows it. It's not like it's not on a superficial level. He knows it very well. So this guy has always been a mystic. And the people I work with in Hollywood are some of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life. I mean, they have, Laura, it's the truth. You meet them and you're like, this person is not intelligent. Their IQ is about half of mine, and they have so much wealth and power, and I don't understand. I once sat in a meeting where I had one of my early successes was I sold a movie about the Taj Mahal, the building and the beautiful love story of the woman that's buried in the Taj Mahal and all that, right? And so I was sitting in a meeting with a Hollywood person, and somebody put, hey, Cameron just did this big thing about he just sold this project in the Taj Mahal, and the person said, oh, I think I heard about that in the trade, right? It's a mob movie, right? I was like, the mob movie? He's like, yeah, it's about the Taj Mahal casino, right? The Trump Taj Mahal. And he'd never heard of the Taj Mahal. He'd never heard of the Taj Mahal in India. He never heard it.
Oh my God. And it's like one of the, 7 wonders of the world?
Because he's too busy having sex with actresses. He doesn't really care. He's rich. He's famous. He doesn't screw all these brown people in India. I don't need to know anything about them. So I was like,
I cannot imagine that. One of the places I've, because growing up, I've been always fascinated. My grandmother, her husband was stationed in various places of the world, Native woman, being able to travel, lived in Spain, got to see Germany, all of that. She always, and we would sit outside, and she'd be like at nighttime, and she'd be sipping on her wine, and she'd be telling us, we're from the stars. And when I die, that's where I'm going. And so we have all these stories that she gives us, whether it's culturally or life experience or whatever. And I just can't imagine, a disconnect with people like that. I can't, because that's not how I was raised. I cannot imagine that huge disconnect.
One of the things that's hurt me a lot in my career is that when I meet stupid people, I can't hide my contempt. I can't. And that's really hard, because when I get dumb notes from a dumb person who's like sitting in a movie studio, who's powerful and can make the movie, and the notes are idiotic, the smart person will go, yeah, boss, that sounds good. I'll make it work. I'll be like, but if we do that, won't it cause this problem? And the moment you show them the problem of their thinking, they get really angry. It's like someone trying to tell Kathleen Kennedy, if we do this, won't this affect the next movie? They don't want to hear it. You're fired. That's why all these directors get fired, because they were like, hey, if we do it this way, you're out. And I'm that guy. Like, but if we do it this, it's going to do that. And then, can I share with you one of the most horrific examples? I've recently gotten very deeply into Bruce Lee. I've always respected him, but now I'm learning more about him, and I'm interested in. Hopefully, if ever they open up this ridiculous state, I can. There's actually one of Bruce Lee's students has a wonderful training center in Jeet Kune Do, which is the martial art tradition Bruce Lee invented, or at least systematized. And so that I'd love to go there. But so a few years ago, I was approached to develop when this new the new de-aging and deepfake technology was being developed. It's being used in Tron and stuff like that. People immediately got the idea, let's bring back Bruce Lee. And so a major movie studio, I won't say which one, approached me. I was approached a bunch of other writers, but I was one of them, came in to pitch. They wanted to use the technology to recreate Bruce Lee on screen, bring him back, right? And they wanted to do that with Will Smith, with a Will Smith movie. And so they're like, well, that's all they knew. Will Smith wanted to do it, and they had the technology to bring back Bruce Lee, and they didn't know how to execute a story. So I came in and I pitched a story I'm very proud of, which was about all of, because there's all this mystery around Bruce Lee's death and whether he was involved in secret societies, dragon societies, whatever, and enemies, the Sith version of that attacked him. Some people think, that the official story of his death isn't true, whatever. But that's the mythology around him. And so I took that mythology and I essentially had Bruce Lee being part of this ancient mystical lineage, right? And that it's always passed from master to disciple. But he was killed before he could, but his spirit returns essentially as a force ghost, right? And then Will Smith would have been the destined person that should have received the training when he was a child, but he was killed before he could do it. So Bruce Lee and he essentially work as these to help Will Smith become this master. And it was very respectful and full of Chinese mysticism and all that stuff. So I come in there and I pitch it and I threw my heart into it because I wanted the gig. So I'm sitting there with this major executive and I'm pitching it, this thing I developed. And then he's looking at me and he goes, yeah, your movie sounds real serious. We just want to do a buddy comedy and make Bruce Lee the sort of butt of the joke. And I said, and I should have just shut up. And I should have just said, well, if I had my dignity, I said, well, I'm not sure that I can execute that. Or if I was like most of these Hollywood guys, like, yeah, boss, give me the money, I'll do that, right? I'm not either of those guys. So I said, so you want to make Bruce Lee the butt of the joke in the movie, and you want it to be, as I said, I don't know if you realize how deeply revered Bruce Lee is. People make Chuck Norris jokes and he goes with it, right? Nobody makes Bruce Lee jokes.
No, that's possible.
He's a revered figure. He's worldwide like a holy man, right? And you want to make him the butt of this joke of this movie, make it a dumb comedy with him and sidekick. He's the spiritual sidekick from the other side. I said, do you realize the reaction you're going to get? I said, I said this to a top executive. Never got a meeting at that studio ever again. I said this to a top executive in front of employees. I said, you're going to be laughed out of this town. Your career is going to end if you try to make that movie. He could not believe I said that to his face. And basically the meeting was over right there. I said, are you crazy?
He's all, get out.
You're going to destroy your career and the studio if you try to make that movie. And I was essentially ushered out of the office, right? When I said that, and never had a meeting there again. But that's the level of people that we are dealing with. And we saw that idea didn't go away. I'm a fan of Quentin Tarantino. I liked a lot of this recent film that he did. I did not like what he did with Bruce Lee. I was insulted by it because Bruce Lee is the butt of the joke in that movie. It's overtaken by Brad Pitt, and I don't think that's possible. And I don't think it was done respectfully to Bruce Lee. I think the actor did a good job of portraying him, but I was really offended by that. I know his family was deeply offended by that, and worldwide fans were offended. So, but that's that mindset, that sort of racism, and we're going to take this Chinese guy and have a white guy. First he becomes a sidekick, the black guy, then he gets his ass kicked by a white guy. That's the Hollywood racism. And that I had that pitch. I did that pitch 10 years ago, and 10 years later, that idea simpers through that Tarantino movie. It never went away. That's the people I'm dealing with. That's the people in this industry, and I can't keep my mouth shut around idiots like that. I have to tell the truth.
Well, that's the same thing they did with Luke Skywalker. They made a butt joke about him.
Yeah,
in The Last Jedi.
The horrible green milk thing.
Yeah.
And what it comes from, I really believe it comes from deep, deep contempt for anything that's greater than them. I believe Mr. Johnson has deep pathological contempt for Luke Skywalker as an archetype, from his own, whatever his own issues with his family. I think he once said in an interview or said in a tweet once that he had issues with his dad. I can see that now, right? And so whatever his family issues are, he projected them on to Luke Skywalker and then humiliated Mark Hamill with it. So those are the real pathologies. The people who are these low-class people getting tremendous amounts of power, now wanting to set the world straight where they can be on top. But their energy is low class, and the end result is revolt.
Yeah, and I was born upon tragedy myself, and I have overcame it, because I was a shaken baby. Both my parents, they're both natives, native mixed. They were abusing alcohol and abusing themselves. I was shaken baby, had blood transfusion, broken ribs, all of that. My grandmother came in, my father's grandmother, my father's mom came in and took me and raised me. And because of her, I'm the woman I am now. But there's a difference between, wanting to overcome and make your life better, through your own culture, spirituality, what have you, and not pass on that trauma to your next generation, versus the ones that don't do that. And then they start leaking it out in whatever part of their life. And that's including like, even with the movie industry, it becomes nihilism.
There's a lot of damaged people here. I mean, there's a lot of very deeply, deeply damaged people here, psychologically ill people who are very successful. And my problem is, because I'm a mystic, I can a little bit see into their hearts and see the truth of things, what's motivating them. And I can't shut my mouth up. You say something that I'm going to respond, man. And that's my career. My career has gone through hell because I can't keep my mouth shut in front of dumb people who are powerful.
Yeah, well, you have a very open throat chakra. That's all I have to say.
It's very clear. It's very clear. It's very. The thing is, even when I try to suppress it to try to just survive the situation and not get fired, I still get fired. So it doesn't matter. Because you can't, your energy field, they can feel that you're just not one of them. And so you got to get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. So we have Soul Assassin, OG, and Mr. Pasha. What era would y'all live in the Old Republic, the Imperial era, or the Legacy era? So Old Republic is prequel trilogy.
Right.
And then Imperial is when we see the rise of the Emperor, after Order 66. I think he's missing the New Republic in there as well, which is the
by Legacy era. Is that what he means by it?
No, Legacy is after the New Republic. Okay. So that's when we have that's when we start seeing the fall of Jason Solo.
Sure.
And stuff. And then shortly after, Luke goes into exile for a little while and then comes back and returns and reclaims his order, and it starts adjusting to the newer generations. So where do you think you would land at? Because Imperial basically is when we see, Vader and all that.
Original trilogy. Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I'd like to explore the Old Republic. I don't know much about it, right? And so, and I would like. There's a lot. I believe a lot of that history is lost by the time of the rise of Palpatine. That's why the Jedi have become stagnant, because I can't believe that they were always so dumb about a lot of things. I think they've evolved into that, right? And so, just like the United States is founded in the 1780s, right? And we've evolved into something even more technologically advanced. The founders would be like, "You're all mere mass. You're not going to. What's happening to you, right?" They wouldn't recognize what we've become, right? I would like to be in a world where I think there was a lot more knowledge and wisdom that was then lost, that Luke is starting the process of trying to rebuild. So I'd be interested in exploring that world it's like Atlantis. It's the lost world.
Yes, and I love the Legacy era. Like I said, I'm a big Luke Skywalker fan, and I just like how he starts reinventing and reconstructing the Jedi Order, and even though they see a lot of trials and tribulations still, it's still a great era. And the Old Republic as well, the Imperial, we still have that conflict, that Imperial era is the shift, is the great shift.
Sure.
That's how I see it.
The Imperial era is 2020, basically. 2020. And now we're about to begin the rebellion era. Now people in the Senate are waking up that, wait a minute, something's wrong here. It feels like, the Palpatine said he was doing all this for our own good. I'm not sure it's for our own good, right? And then the rebellion begins.
Okay, so we have another one, Christopher Barker. Hey, Alora and Kamran, do you think Star Wars relies on what's familiar to us? Example, hey, there's a Vader, Kenobi, Luke again. So you're saying like
I think it's like it doesn't work without them. I think that Disney now needs to do that because whatever they tried was badly thought out, right? They could have done a Star Wars that was Old Republic or past the current timeline of Luke is 200 years later or whatever. They could have done that, but they didn't have because again, they're not visionaries. They're just a bunch of, morons, right? So, yeah.
So we have similarities here. Cavantino Che. What the F? Mahal means love. Even in Tagalog, Taj Mahal is Taj's love.
Well, our languages are all linked, which is what the people of Hawaii claim, that their language is the basis of all languages. It's interesting. The more you study Hawaiian language, you'll find, hey, there's a lot of words in Hawaiian language in Urdu in Pakistan. How did that happen? Right? It's really surprising the more you look into it. But yeah, in Mahal in Urdu, which is sort of the language of the Muslims of India who built it, it actually means palace, and Taj means crown. So in that, it means crown palace. But the interesting thing is it's a palace for love. It's for a woman who died.
Exactly. Very much. And then again, Soul Assassin, be water, Bruce Lee. Yes, exactly. Cavantino, if Game of Death can be completed, that would be great.
Yes. So now I have to actually apologize to you because I have some commitments I have to get to by 4:30, which is just a few minutes away. So I'm going to have to start winding down, and I would love to do this for another 2 hours, but I just have some things I've got to take care of.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So we will end it here then. And so I'm not going to get to everybody's, chats with us. So I apologize, but I just respect time and stuff as well. But
are there any super chats that because I think especially someone who's paid for it should be acknowledged. Are there super chats that we should definitely do those before I sign off?
No, there's no more. We got them all. So, all right. So I could sit here and chat with you for hours on this.
God will do it again. We haven't done it in a few months, but I always feel energized when I talk to you, Laura. I mean, we've never met in person, but I feel like I found like a spiritual sister in the journey, and it's wonderful.
Yes, thank you. And I feel the same way as well. So anyway, so thank you, chat, for coming in. And so I did link your website with your book and everything inside the description below, but go ahead and let them know where they can find you.
Sure. My website, which should be on the link, is my name, KamranPasha.com, KamranPasha.com. It's got a blog where I share a lot of my ideas on religion in particular, spirituality, politics, and it has my novels, which I have a couple of historical novels about the Middle East published through Simon & Schuster, which there are links to. You can buy it through Amazon or through the links that are on my site. And if anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, where I'm pretty, I don't have any limitations on my politics, which is probably a bad idea because every now and then someone in Hollywood reads them and goes, what? I don't know if I want to hire this guy. So I probably should have to not have my Twitter public, but whatever. It is what it is. At this point, 20 years of this crap, I don't care anymore, whatever. So that's my name again, Twitter, Kamran Pasha, if you want to follow me there.
Okay. Thank you so much again for, coming on and chatting with me about Star Wars, culture, spirituality, all that. It's all interconnected. And I think that's why, everybody's protecting Star Wars the way they are. At least I am. Because I recognize all of that. And again, thank you so much, chat, for tuning in. And for those who became members and also for the super chats, you guys are all amazing. Thank you for the support of this channel. And you could catch me on Toxic Femme Monday nights and Thursday. Now we're not only having coffee chat, but we're also reviewing what is it called? Spectre of the Past, Thrawn duology novel. So we're doing that Thursday evening at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So come in and listen and join in on the chat. So thank you again for joining me as well. And I enjoyed this conversation. And everybody have a good day, and may the Force be with you.